Another deadly plane collision happening this time on a runway in Scottsdale, Arizona. Have you heard about this one? One of those planes involved, reportedly owned by Vince Neil of Mötley Crüe. Now, he wasn't on board, but investigators say one person is dead after that mid-sized business jet veered off the runway, crashing into a parked plane that was right there on the ramp. Authorities say the main landing gear failed as that plane was coming in. But all these recent crashes across the country have left many Americans pretty nervous about flying, and it's placed the airline industry under intense scrutiny. Joining me now is NewsNation travel editor Peter Greenberg. Peter, I'm sorry we keep on meeting for these aviation tragedies to discuss, but let's start with Scottsdale this morning. Investigators say the cause of the crash is due to faulty landing gear, but I mean, this was a Learjet 35A. Why didn't landing gear horns go off?
It doesn't work that way. This is actually a structural failure of the landing gear. That's what they're looking at. By the time that happened, the pilot lost control of the plane and left the runway. This qualifies as what we would call a runway incursion. This is something that's growing in America at airports, not because of mechanical failures as much as it is just too much traffic, not enough separation, and congested space, not just on the runways, but on the taxiways and the alleys. Now, there are two different things we're talking about here. Runway incursions, which are near collisions with other planes on or near the runways. And then we have tarmac collisions like we saw just the other day in Seattle, where a Japan Airlines 787 slashed through the right wing of his plane into the tail of a Delta Airlines 737. So all these things need to be addressed because it's a systemic problem with control of the airspace in the air and the control of the ground space at airports. You
brought up the Seattle incident, too, which I also wanted to touch on. I mean, we've seen the videos that passengers took of these two planes colliding with one another. I mean, just right there on the ramp in Seattle. How did that happen? You know, I mean, ATC gives you very specific when to move moves.
Right, but that's not ATC. No, that's not ATC. That's ground control. And the problem with ground control is if you have too many planes in the air at concentrated times, that means there are too many planes either taking off or landing. And if you have too many planes sitting at the gate unable to move, or haven't been pushed back yet, you have basically a traffic jam. And the actual margin for error between the wing of one plane and the wing of another, the way the jetways are set up, is not great. And therefore, you have a problem. Plus, you can land on a runway and then have to wait out there for at least 15 to 20 minutes because you're unable to cross the runway because of all the other traffic taking off. It creates another jam. So the airports need to weigh in on this, too, in terms of their own runway capacity and their own tarmac capacity. This is something the FAA also has to work on, and they haven't really done it.
Yeah, but would that Japanese airplane not have been in, like, line of sight? Was that a blind spot for the other airplane, based on what you've seen?
It could have been a blind spot. You may notice every time you land, they have marshalers, guys on either side of the wing with those red cones doing this, right? They're all doing that to try to guide the pilot in. But the pilot can't see much of that. He can only see what's ahead of him. He can't really see too much of what's on the side of him. He needs that help. But because the margins are so thin in terms of the space, you have situations like this happen, especially when the tarmac is already crowded.
Yeah, you and I were on air together here in Chicago a couple of weeks ago talking about the D.C. plane crash. And there have been so many incidents since. A lot of people are now nervous about flying, Peter. What needs to be done to restore faith in airline safety right now?
Well, you've got to reshape up the FAA itself. It's a system problem. Remember, no airplane accident ever happens for any one reason. It's a combination of reasons that combine to form a situation which you can't recover. So what the investigators are looking for example, in Washington, they already know certain things, right? They know that the pilots of the American Airlines plane were doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and they were exactly where they were supposed to be. It goes back to who was controlling the helicopter and how many people were controlling the helicopter, raising issues of staffing issues at the FAA with controllers, not to mention electronics, because the helicopter wasn't transponding in a way that the controller could see there was an altitude problem, which would have triggered a collision avoidance alert. None of those things were happening that night, and you saw what happened next.
Yeah, just horrific all around, all of these stories. I got to end it there, but Peter Greenberg, as always, appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.